blue eyes of the elder Graham as he surveyed the men who thought he was their dupe. Her heart warmed to him. His kindly, merry face, his hearty, unconventional speech, all showed him to be a big, warm-hearted man without a bit of snobbishness about him. The sun came in, and talk began just as if the matter of the mine were going on. Mr. Kremnitz produced some papers, which he evidently expected to be signed at once, and sat complacently answering questions, keen questions Shirley saw they were afterwards, and in the light of the revelation she had overheard in Mr. Barnard's office, Kremnitz perjured himself hopelessly by his answers. Presently the office boy announced the arrival of someone in the next room. Shirley had taken down minutely a great deal of valuable information which the Grahams had together drawn from their victim. She was surprised at the list of wealthy business men who were to have been involved in the scheme. Then suddenly the quiet scene changed. The elder Graham gave a signal to his office boy, which looked merely like waving him away, and the door was flung open, revealing 4 officers of the law, who stepped into the room without further word. Graham arose and faced his 2 startled callers, his hand firmly planted on the papers on his desk which he had been supposed to sign. " Mr. Kremnitz," he said, and even in the midst of this serious business Shirley fancied there was a half comic drawl to his words. He simply could not help letting his sense of humor come on top. " Mr. Kremnitz, it is not going to be possible for me to sign these papers this morning as you expected. I do not feel satisfied that all things are as you have represented. In fact, I have the best evidence to the contrary. Officer, these are the gentlemen you have come to arrest," said he, and he stepped back and waved his hand toward the 2 conspirators, who sat with startled eyes and blanched faces, appalled at the sudden developments where they had thought all was moving happily toward their desired end. "Arrest? Who? On what charge?" flashed the little gaudy Kremnitz, angrily springing to his feet and making a dash toward the door, while his companion slid furtively toward the other end of the room, evidently hoping to gain young Graham's office before he was noticed. But 2 officers blocked their way, and the handcuffs clanked in the hands of the other 2 policemen. " Why arrest you, my friend," said Graham Sr., as if he rather enjoyed the little man's discomfiture, " and for trying to perpetrate the biggest swindle that has been attempted for 10 years. I must say for you that you've worked hard and done the trick rather neatly, but you made one unfortunate slip that saved all us poor rich men. It seems a pity that so much elaborate lying should have brought you to nothing but those bracelets you're wearing. They don't seem to match well with your other jewels, but that's the way things go in this world. Now take them away, officer. I have no more time to waste on them this morning." And he turned and walked over by Shirley's desk while the curtain fell over the brief drama. "Do you know how much money you've saved for us, little girl? Just plain saved? I'll tell you. A clean $100,000. That's what I was going to put into this affair. And as for other men, I expected to influence a lot of other men to put in a good deal also. Now, little girl, I don't know what you think about it, but I want to shake hands." He put out his hand, and Shirley laid her own timid one in it, smiling and blushing rosily, and saying softly with what excited breath she had, "Oh, I'm so glad I got to you in time." Then she was aware that the man had gone on talking. "I don't know what you think about it," he repeated, "but I feel that you saved me a clean $100,000, and I say that a good percentage of that belongs to you as a reward of your quickness and keenness." But Shirley drew away her hand and stepped back, her face white, her head up, her chin tilted proudly, her eyes very dark with excitement and determination. She spoke clearly and earnestly. "No, Mr. Graham, nothing whatever belongs to me. I don't want any reward. I couldn't think of taking it. It is utterly out of the question." "Well, well, well!" said the elder Graham, sitting down on the edge of his desk, watching her in undisguised admiration. "Now that's a new kind of girl that won't take what she's earned, what rightly belongs to her." "Mr. Graham, it was a very little thing I did. Anybody would have done it, and it was just in the way of simple duty. Please don't say anything more about it. I am only too glad to have had opportunity to give a little help to people who have helped me so much. I feel that I am under deep obligation to your son for making it possible for us to live in the country where my mother is getting well." "Well, now, I shall have to inquire into this business. I haven't heard anything about obligations, and for my part I feel a big one just now. Perhaps you think it was a very little thing you did, but suppose you hadn't done it. Suppose you'd been too busy, or it hadn't occurred to you to take down that conversation until it was too late. Or suppose you hadn't had the brains to see what it would mean to us, why, then it would have become a very big thing indeed, and we should have been willing, if we had known, to pay a mighty big sum to get that evidence. You see, $100,000 isn't exactly a very little thing when you're swindled out of it. It's the swindling that hurts more than the loss of the money, and you saved us from that. Now, young lady, I consider myself under obligation to you, and I intend to discharge it somehow. If I can't do it one way, I shall another. But in the meantime, I'm deeply grateful, and please accept our thanks. If you are willing to add one more to your kindness, I shall be glad if you will make a carbon copy of those shorthand notes you took. I may need them for evidence. And by the way, you will probably be called upon to testify in court. I'm sorry. That may be unpleasant, but I guess it can't be helped. So you see, before you get through, you may not think you did so very small a thing after all. Sid, I think you better escort this young lady back to her office and explain to Barnard. He's probably been on the verge of being buncoed also. You said Kremnitz was waiting for him when the conversation took place. I guess you better go with Miss Hollister and clear the whole thing up. Say, child, have you had your lunch yet? No, of course not. Sidney, you take her to get some lunch before she goes back to the office. She's had an exciting morning. Now, goodbye, little girl. I shan't forget what you've done for us, and I'm coming to see you pretty soon and get things squared up. So that was how it came about that in spite of her protests, Mr. Sidney Graham escorted Shirley Hollister into one of the most exclusive tea rooms of the city and seated her at a little round table set for two, while off at a short distance Miss Harriet Hale sat with her mother, eating her lunch and trying in vain to "place" the pretty girl she did not recognize. It never occurred to her for a moment that Sidney Graham's companion might be a stenographer, for Shirley had a knack about her clothes that made her always seem well dressed. That hat she wore had seen service for 3 summers, and was now a wholly different shape and color from what it had been when it began life. A scrub in hot water had removed the dust of toil. Some judiciously applied dye had settled the matter of color, and a trifling manipulation on her head while the hat was still wet had made the shape not only exceedingly stylish, but becoming. The chic little rosette and strictly tailored band, which were its sole trimming, were made from a much soiled waist ribbon, washed and stretched around a bottle of hot water to dry it, and teased into the latest thing in rosettes by Shirley's witching fingers. The simple linen dress she wore fitted well, and at a distance could not have been told from something better, and neither were gloves and shoes near enough to be inspected critically, so Miss Hale was puzzled, and jealously watched the pretty color come and go in Shirley's cheek and the simple grace of her movements. Fortunately, Shirley did not see Miss Hale, and would not have recognized her if she had, from that one brief glimpse she had of her picture on the society page of the newspaper. So she ate her delectable lunch, ordered by Graham, in terms that she knew not, about dishes that she had never seen before. She ate and enjoyed herself so intensely that it seemed to her she would never be able to make the rest of her life measure up to the privileges of the hour. For Shirley was a normal girl. She could not help being pleased to be doing just for once exactly as other more favored girls did constantly. To be lunching at Blanco's with one of the most sought after men in the upper set, to be treated like a queen, and to be talking beautiful things about travels and pictures and books, it was all too beautiful to be real. Shirley began to feel that if it didn't get over pretty soon and find her back in the office addressing the rest of those envelopes, she would think she had died in the midst of a dream and gone to heaven. There was something else, too, that brought an undertone of beauty, which she was not acknowledging even to her inmost self. That was the way Graham looked at her, as if she were some fine, beautiful angel dropped down from above that he loved to look at, as if he really cared what she thought and did, as if there were somehow a soul harmony between them that set them apart this day from others and put them into tune with one another, as if he were glad, glad to see her once more after the absence. All through her being it thrilled like a song that brings tears to the throat and gladness to the eyes and makes one feel strong and pure. That was how it seemed when she thought about it afterward. At the time she was just living it in wonder and thanksgiving. At another time her sordid worldliness and pride might have risen and swelled with haughtiness of spirit over the number of people who eyed her enviously as they went out together, over the many bows and salutations her escort received from people of evident consequence, for she had the normal human pride somewhere in her nature, as we all have. But just then her heart was too humble.